Philip McCann, European institutions are currently working on the design of the next regional policy for 2014-2020. In your opinion, what will be the main differences between the current and the next EU financial perspective with regards to EU cohesion policy?
Well, the reform process in terms of cohesion policies is a multi-dimensional reform. There are many elements that need to be understood as coming together. So it's not a single element, there's several elements, and they're important to understand each one and to see how they fit. The first one is to do with the changing architecture. There are some architectural changes, notably what we call the Common Strategic Framework, and the idea is to integrate different funding streams. And here the emphasis is to develop policies and programs that combine different thematic issues. So, for example, skills and human capital could be combined with certain aspects of research and development. Policy actions related to innovation could also be combined with issues related to environment or transport. But as well as the actual legal and architectural changes of the policy, the reasons that underlie the changes are to do with behaviour. It's about changing the nature of the policy, how the policy works, what it does. And this is really in response to the shifting global environment. Obviously, changes within Europe in the last 10, 20 years have been very significant, but in the broader picture of global changes, we need to understand the role of growth and development and the role that cohesion policy plays in that. But particularly what's important here is shifting to what we call a results-oriented policy. So the idea is that all programs and the projects which are embedded in the programs are focused on long-term results. What are the objectives? What are the aims that we are intending? What are we trying to achieve in terms of when we design those programs and those policies, when we implement them, and then when we deliver them? What is it we're trying to do? What are the aspects of societal well-being that we're trying to influence? And in order to do this, what we need is a policy which provides for prioritization. And once we prioritise, then we can steer the policy, we can move the policy on, we can monitor, and we can learn and evaluate. So two critical elements here. One is what we call smart specialisation. And smart specialisation is a way of prioritising, of deciding, given the context, given the region, given the place, what are the potentials of the region, what are the challenges of the region, how do we use those resources, we prioritise, make those best choices which give us the most potential to drive innovation, to drive the Europe 2020 agenda more broadly. And part of that also is developing what we call results indicators, finding ways of capturing those changes so we can monitor them and evaluate them. It's not because we know the results of the outcomes of the policies, it's not that. It's so that we can best steer those policies, adapt them and adjust them as the information comes forward from the policies and the programs themselves.
You participated in our workshop called Assessing the Impact of EU Cohesion Policy. And part of the discussion, of course, focused on growth and solidarity. So could you tell us what are the main challenges for the European Union in keeping a balance between these two principles while implementing cohesion policy?
What we understand is that growth and development is interrelated. Smart growth and knowledge-driven, innovation-driven growth has to be compatible with sustainability issues, environmental issues, energy, resource usage. And both of those dimensions of growth are always interrelated and are also interrelated, both of them, with issues of equality, inequality, participation. We call this inclusion issues. The three dimensions of growth are always there, and long-term sustainable growth, understood in the broadest sense, requires that we move forward on all three dimensions simultaneously. This is beautifully captured in the Europe 2020 agenda. The reforms to cohesion policy are situated precisely in that context. The reforms which are being undertaken now are designed to move forward, to build on, to activate, to catalyse specific actions, specific linkages, mechanisms to promote that Europe 2020 agenda. These issues are difficult. In many cases, those dimensions of growth can be seen as complementary. But there are also many cases where those different aspects of growth can be rather conflicting. And the relationship between these conflicts and these complementarities are also different in different localities, different countries and different regions. So part of the cohesion policy reforms is also to try and understand, to explore those and to build on those and to find ways to move the overall Europe 2020 agenda forward. I would say the reforms are very innovative. I think most people think that. Across Europe there's enormous debate about these issues. I think the workshop here today in Bruegel has been tremendous. trying to understand about what kind of role do we play here, how do these tensions trade off against each other, where can we identify complementarities, and how can we do it. And so a lot of issues come into play relating to institutions, objectives, evaluation of these mechanisms and so on. So it's a broad encompassing approach which is underpinned the reform to cohesion policy, but that also reflects the much broader Europe 2020 agenda, which is trying to deal with these issues of participation, solidarity, at the same time as environmental issues, exclusion issues, all of these different themes underpinned by a new knowledge agenda.